Welcome everybody to the latest and greatest of our webinar series. Today we are going to be talking about best practices for email marketing. Shelly, I'm not seeing your PowerPoint anymore, so feel free to throw that up whenever you're ready. As I noted, this is the latest in our webinar series. We do have another full series that we've rolled out now that we're back into the swing of things after the holidays and we're into 2021, thank goodness. So we have some great topics coming up, and also some presentations from LOT staff and from some experts that we work with regularly on a whole lot of topics. So we are skipping next week's webinar, but with the exception of that, because it's Mardi Gras, we are doing this every Tuesday at 11 a.m. And we're going to try to keep these kind of brief so that we don't take up too much of your day, but we can get some good info over to you guys. So we're looking at like the half hour, 45-minute mark usually. So we'll be done in time for lunch. And so be sure to check out the full list and register for the ones that you have interest in. Share these to whomever you think might be able to use the information. We are not restricting who can come in. These are for everybody. Literally anyone who thinks this would be of interest to them can come in and watch. So attractions, hotels, obviously our CBD partners, but everyone is welcome. So get it out to whomever you think needs it. We are also recording all of these and we'll be posting up the recordings on the industry portal. And so if you want to see one and you're going to miss it, don't fret. We'll post up a recording and you can get to take a look at that when you have time. Our next one on the 23rd is going to be on grant writing with Sharon Calco from here at LOT. So she is obviously our grant genius. So she's going to go through some of the different things that you need to know as you prepare to try and get some grant funding to move some projects or start some new projects for your region or attraction. Other reminder, be sure to check out the industry portal, louisianatravel.com/industry, for other educational opportunities. In addition to all of our recorded webinars in this entire series, we have the Google Recovery Toolkit that we partnered with Miles on. So it is also totally free to whomever, not just CVBs, but attractions as well. And it offers a lot of other best practices for a lot of digital marketing. So from like SEO, SEM, to developing content, managing your Google My Business account and your Google listings so that information is super, super accurate as people are looking to see where they can go and what they can do for those people that are interested and willing to finally get out of the house for a little while. So check that out. It's free. Again, you can access it through our industry portal, louisianatravel.com/industry, and it's just a passcode that we provide to get into that. So there's a lot of other resources there as well. So check out the portal and look into what you might have interest in. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. I'm Jennifer Berthelot, the Director of Communications for the Office of Tourism. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Shelly Benson from Miles. She is our web and content email genius, and she is going to take you through best practices for email marketing.
Well, genius is gracious, so thank you. Like Jennifer said, we're going to be talking about email best practices today. A lot of these are some top level best practices that we tend to talk about year over year, but we're also going to be looking at these and how they relate to COVID and 2021 and what we can do with our marketing efforts there. So when we start thinking about email, there's been a lot of people over the years who have predicted that email is going to be one of those things that disappears. And I think, as you all know, that's just not the case. It's still a desired marketing channel. When we look at all those different marketing channels and efforts that you might be putting into your programs, your e-news signups are some of the most engaged, loyal, and active participants. And this really is what a qualified lead is. They've actively opted in, they want info, and this is why email is still a really incredibly powerful marketing tool, especially when you understand your email program, your goals, your audience, and then how to optimize it. Additionally, email marketing is one of those channels that's actually rather inexpensive compared to some of the other maybe bigger digital buys or print buys that you might have in your toolkit, yet it's still extremely effective because it's still action oriented and it's measurable. So when we think about our best practices for 2021, with COVID, people are working from home more than they have obviously before. And with that, they have a lot more access to their inboxes. So we're seeing the inbox activity is up almost 20% just since the beginning of the pandemic. And that's actually a lot. That means people are engaging with e-news more than they ever have. People are looking for information that helps them understand how COVID is affecting their lives. They're really looking for that new and timely information. Along with that, safety messaging and open communication is still extremely important in 2021. It's really allowing for people to navigate their comfort level when they're planning travel. And additionally, I think, this is a huge opportunity to become even more of that authoritative voice for your destination or your attraction, because people are looking for that info directly from the source. And it's also a time to really hone your marketing message. And this is why. It's really important to understand the market and traveler sentiments. This is a traveler sentiment report that we did with Longwoods International. And this data is from January 26th. And what you can see here is that there's a wide range of people's comfort level when they're looking at travel. So you really want your messaging to be connecting with your audience. And the last thing we would want is for a message to be too aggressive or seem insensitive to the moment. This might be one of the most important things to remember when you're thinking about your e-news and your content plans over 2021. I've also included some links to these resources at the end so that you can stay up to date with the latest travel perceptions. It's actually changing pretty frequently. Even since this report that came out on January 26th, we actually received a new report this morning, and it's showing that travel perceptions are actually starting to shift a bit in the positive as people's travel confidence is starting to rise now that we have the availability of some of these vaccines. So it's definitely a really nice resource to stay on top of, whether you decide to do it weekly or monthly. So definitely check that out. So when we really think about email marketing, one of the most frequent questions we get is how to benchmark your success with your email program. And Campaign Monitor is a campaign or is a e-news platform, and they offer lots of different industry stats. And so these ones are specific to the travel industry, but this is kind of a good guideline to make sure that you're hitting some different benchmarks for your success rates with your email program. As you can see, they also tend to do industry averages across lots of different industries. So it's actually kind of fun to compare what that engagement is in the travel, hospitality, and leisure versus some of those other industries. And so if you're questioning or thinking, oh, maybe some of my stats are lower than the travel industry average, we can talk about how to improve some of these in the slides to come. So let's go ahead and just jump into best practices. We're going to start off with talking about subject lines. Obviously, subject lines are going to be the things that get your readers to open your email. And so the subject line is very much like an outer envelope of like a direct mail piece. Just like a direct mail piece, if that outer envelope is not compelling, people will not open it. GetResponse has some data that says that almost 50% of subscribers decide to open an email based solely on the subject line. That is, they don't care if it's coming directly from the source. Even if they know it's coming directly from you, that subject line has to intrigue their attention or grab their attention. In general, there's lots of opinions and information and maybe even some myths out there as to what is an appropriate do and don't for writing subject lines. However, I like to really hone in on these top 4 tips when writing subject lines. And it's really the idea of creating that urgency by adding a strong call to action. That's a CTA. You also want to keep your subject lines really short, the 90 to 140 characters. It just makes it easier for people to read and know what they're diving into when they open your email. The third thing is to really create excitement and curiosity with that subject line. go ahead and get their attention. But while you're doing that, the fourth tip is to don't trick your readers. If you are pitching something in that subject line, it better be in the email. If they have a hard time finding it, it's going to cause a very frustrating user experience. So really what it comes down to is spend a decent amount of time crafting that subject line. And the best way to know if you're hitting the right marks with your audience is to test it. That can be done with A/B testing on the subject line. And then another part is, even though it's a very important part of the email process, don't make yourself crazy. If you're really questioning some of the subject lines and their efficiency, you can always go to this really cool resource, subjectline.com. And you can actually just go ahead and drop in the different subject lines that you're thinking about using. And it gives you this cool little score. And then it also gives you some guidelines. So I would say do that along with testing, and you'll be in a good spot with some of your subject lines. When we're thinking about those success rates and metrics, obviously your open rate is directly connected to your subject line. And so it's going to be important to go ahead and spend that time to optimize and test your subject lines. As a reminder, those open rates are calculated by the number of opens divided by the number of delivered emails. So just using some really simple math, if you have 100 emails that are delivered and 50 of them are open, then you're going to have a 50% open rate. And some of the top 3 things that I think of when I'm wanting to improve my open rate is we improve the subject lines like we just talked about, do lots of testing. You might want to also consider testing the timing of your deployments, if it's the right day, the right time of day, and we'll talk about that more in upcoming slides. And then we also want to think about, is the content relevant? And you can hone in on more relevant content by adding some personalization and some segmentation to your email programs. And we'll talk more about that as well. So moving on to the second best practice is we want to talk about the email frequency. The timing is really important when deciding which day to send an email. It varies a lot depending on the industry and your own audience list. However, in general, the Campaign Monitor data shows that sending e-news on Tuesdays and Fridays tend to have better engagement rates. And these tend to flip-flop year over year, but this is what we're seeing in the current moment. In general, weekends seem to have a lower engagement. Perhaps people are just logging off, or they're not, immediately stuck in front of their computer. And then additionally, many stats show that emails being sent after 10 a.m. are more likely to be engaged with. And some people think that's more just because of the timing of the day. People have started work, they're in front of their computer, and they're opening emails. If you are curious about, if you're curious about your email frequency and your timing, or maybe you just want to be adding some more communications to your content plans, one of the things I would think about when you start to send more emails is you want to watch your unsubscribe rate. That's going to be your first indicator or your barometer. If the unsubscribe rates are jumping up wildly, then you're probably sending too many emails. The next thing to watch is that if you're sending more emails and your unsubscribe rate is staying pretty neutral, then I would watch your open rates. If your open rates start to decline, then that might also be an indication that you're sending too many emails. The next best practice that we want to talk about is content. Content can be a little obvious, but the content and messaging is so incredibly important. You really want to offer information that is relevant to your audience. And this is what you're also going to be optimizing as well. I think in 2021 and in 2020, we found out pretty quickly that our content plans that used to be pretty solid are no longer, and we have to call in lots of flexibility. Those content plans are going to be fluid in 2021, and that's in order to match the travel sentiments of your audience, and also to really be flexible with COVID. Lots of things change all the time. And so if we can lead with creativity, curiosity, and up-to-date information, that's going to resonate greatly with your audiences. A couple other points here is just really that you want to think about your different messages per audience and really hone in those messages per audience. And then also really keep that safety message and that open communication top of mind. Whether you're a CVB or hotel, for example, you want to be on the forefront of your safety message. And as I talked about in the beginning, it's really worth spending time on this, as it's ensuring that it's working with the current travel sentiments, and that you're also giving different messages to your different audiences based off of their comfort level. For example, an in-state message could be very, very different than an out-of-state message. And when we think about content, the metric that is directly related to your success rate of your content is going to be your click-through rate. Just a reminder on click-through rates, that's the number of clicks divided by the number of delivered emails. And it's literally showing of all those people that opened an email, this amount clicked on your content and made it all the way through to your website and to the story that you're pitching in your emails. We recommend that your click-through rates, if they're suffering a little bit, go ahead and look at these 3 bullet points. Really think about your calls to action through your copy. And I would also really suggest looking at the design of your email. Make sure it's responsive. Make sure it's really readable in every mobile platform and desktop. Also make sure that the design isn't overcomplicating or distracting from the actual content and message that you're trying to offer. Also include strong incentives to capture subscribers' attention. And then last but not least, definitely look at that subject line again and make sure that it's accurately reflecting the content that's in your email. One of the next best practices that I really enjoy talking about is personalization. It can be done in a multitude of ways. This slide is just kind of showing some of the ways that different destinations have segmented out their email programs. So it just allows for a lot of customizable messages to really make that audience feel like you're talking directly to them. I would say that it's arguable that the best content marketing strategies are not campaign focused, but category focused in order to connect with that target audience. There are a ton of different stats out there, but Experian did do some testing and they found that when they made one personalization update by just adding the recipient's name to the subject line, they saw a 26% increase in open rates. And so I think it really speaks to the fact that people are looking for that personalized message. I like to start by looking at opportunities to segment your audience. This can be done by geolocation or by interest. Key segments meaning that these are the people that have engaged with your email the most. You can go back and see which signups have actually been the most engaged, how often they open your emails, and you can incentivize them or give them little lanyards, if you will, to maybe get the first dibs on a giveaway, or maybe a first dibs on a free swag that you might be sending out, something like that. It's just a way to really engage a very specific part of your email group. You also want to consider the time of travel when they're considering travel, if you have that data. And from there, you're going to be able to target your messaging to be able to really talk to those different audiences that you've separated out. And then last but not least, those layers of personalization come in with things like a name in the subject line, or maybe it's a name at the top of their email so that they know you've spent the time crafting this message just for them. It could also be an email that's directly related to the interests that they've signed up on. Perhaps they're looking for outdoors emails, and so you're going to send them outdoors content. One thing that we do want to talk about is the unsubscribe rate. And so obviously an unsubscribe rate is just the number or percentage of users who have opted out. And so if you're noticing that your unsubscribe rate is high, there's just a few things that you want to really dive back into. Like, go ahead and look at those stats in detail. Figure out if you think the subject line maybe kicked them out, or perhaps there was a misleading email where, you know, you teased some information and maybe it wasn't obvious. And so people got frustrated and unsubscribed. You also really want to think about your list creations. Are you getting qualified, legitimate email signups? And then you also want to take that and really dive into your list hygiene. And that means you can re-engage audiences or different segments if they've been quiet for a while. You can even do list scrubs. Sometimes people get really nervous about deleting email contacts if they haven't been opening the list because they'd like to show a bigger list amount. But what it really does is you're just getting unqualified people, and it's going to really change your open and click-through rates. So even if you're cutting out quite a hefty amount of people that haven't engaged with your email in a while, it's going to revive your list and really bring it back into an engaged audience. And then last but not least, these are just some housekeeping items that I couldn't let you walk away from without remembering to check on these. The first one is the can spam laws. Let's just be really honest, and we'll say it now. You want to keep yourself out of trouble, and you really want to make sure you are compliant with the can spam requirements. It's not something that you want to ignore or maybe not put into focus. These are very important. Another thing on that list is the unsubscribe options. Sometimes people like to get a little fancy and they want to make it so it's not very obvious where people can unsubscribe. And that's actually the last thing you want to do. If someone wants to unsubscribe, make that a very easy process for them, because they're also not engaged with your list anymore, and you don't want to, you don't want to have them being frustrated that they can't unsubscribe. And then you also don't want to be spending time talking to someone that isn't listening. The next thing is your sender name. This is the name that the email is coming from. So it's how people identify where the email is coming. Just really make sure that that sender name is very clear. People don't need to know that it's Katie from Miles Partnership. They just want to know it's Miles Partnership. It brings an authoritative tone to it, and it really allows people to know exactly where that communication is coming from. And then last but not least, we didn't really talk about this as much, but automated emails are also a really great way to engage with your audience, especially things like welcome emails. So as soon as a user signs up, please make sure that they receive a timely welcome letter. It's a really easy way to allow them to feel that they're top of mind. And then they also have some content to start exploring while they're waiting for the next e-news deployment, whenever that might come. So we've talked a lot about how to optimize your own email marketing programs, but we also wanted to bring this back to working with Louisiana Office of Tourism. As Jennifer said, I've been working on the e-news program with them for many, many years. And there's lots of different ways to work with the Louisiana Office of Tourism. I think most of you are aware of there's an advertising opportunity. So we do include advertising spots in each of the e-news that we deploy. But secondarily, there's also an opportunity to really help create content and mentions within the e-news that could benefit your destinations. So if you have some ideas on content or you have anything like that, just reach out to us and we'd love to start that conversation and see where that attraction could be worked in for a promotion within the e-news. And very last but not least, I wanted to leave you with some resources that I referred to earlier. The first one is the Miles Partnership COVID portal, and that's where you can find all the latest stats, research, and webinars about what's happening in the travel industry. And then last but not least, the Campaign Monitor industry stats. Campaign Monitor just does a really great job of showing all kinds of stats that I think are incredibly helpful when you're trying to optimize your e-news program. And with that, I will hand it back over to Jennifer and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Shelley. If there are any questions, you can either put them in the chat if you don't want to come out loud with them, but we're not a terribly large crowd, so if you want to just pose any out loud, you definitely can. And I want to reiterate what you mentioned about our e-news. I've heard from a couple of our partners wondering how they can get something new and if they have a new product or something that they're trying to feature right now. And all of our content really that we have on our e-news is something that comes from louisianatravel.com. But we want to optimize those articles, add new products that you guys have, make sure that we're covering anything that you want to feature or have that you're pushing out. So if you have a new tour or a new attraction or a new hotel or something open, be sure that you're giving us that information. We can work it into a variety of different places and make sure that we're sharing it the way you want us to share it, especially through our e-news. So I've gotten a few partners in that are working on doing that with us and letting us know a little bit more about what they have going on as it happens, so we can keep some of these articles super fresh and make sure that everybody's represented. So definitely do that. I'm not seeing any questions. So if everyone is good, we can wrap up and let everyone go back to their work day. I want to thank everybody for coming and remind them all again to go to our portal. I say it too often probably, but visit our industry portal, louisianatravel.com/industry, for future webinars and for other education and all sorts of resources that we're offering right now as we look forward to recovering from COVID and the impacts that it's had on the industry. But, thank everyone for coming, and we'll hopefully see you at the next one. You're welcome.
Thanks.